nice, healthy cloud of smoke. And if you look at it there, you got, it's definitely posy. And here, looking at the car itself, that's a little bit of rubber on the wheel wells there. Just a little.
Hello again, everybody. The next car you selected to view on where, Jeremy?
It's ClassicMuscleCars.com.
Look at that, ClassicMuscleCars.com, and there's the entrance to the building of ClassicMuscleCars.com. Way down there, we got a big building up here full of beautiful cars. You know what? You need to come up and visit, because not only do we have cars in here, we got some of the best rock and roll memorabilia in the country for the era of the 60s and early 70s. So is that right or wrong, Jeremy?
We got some very unique stuff in here.
Actually, one of our buddies is up here in Chicago playing tonight in Westmont. And who would that be, Jeremy?
Jimmy Signs from the Shadows, including the Shadows, and not just Jimmy, the whole band is here.
Absolutely. They're going to be playing in Chicago here for the next few weeks, I understand, right?
Correct. I think there's 3 shows scheduled right now.
Very cool. If you ever get a chance to come up here and visit us, you will see a lot of his memorabilia here that Jimmy, some of the songs that he did, and some of the acetates from the original Gloria. It's really cool. We got some really cool stuff here, so you need to come up, take a walk around and look at some of the beautiful cars that we have, and look at some of this awesome rock and roll memorabilia, because you know what? When we were driving these cars back in the day of the muscle car era, we were listening to some really good tunes, and those people that performed them are in here, either autographs or the records or albums or photographs or personal belongings or whatever. So we got some cool stuff, right, Jeremy?
Absolutely.
And right now, folks, you probably watched the beginning of this video and you went, oh my God, I can't believe it. Well, you know what? Let's talk about what you are looking at. This is an extremely rare car. This car, for the first time, we're going to talk about it, bring it out in public so that people can understand why these cars are as rare as they are. This is a 1978 Macho TA. Now let's talk a little bit about the history of muscle cars, and let's talk about why this car is so important, and let's talk about why this car is so important today for an investment automobile. Now, in the 60s for Pontiac, you had Royal Bobcat. Royal Bobcat was in Michigan, and what they did was the same as Nicky Chevrolet in Chicago, the same as Baldwin Motion Chevrolet, the same as Yanko Chevrolet, the same as Berger Chevrolet, the same as Dana Chevrolet in California. Now, that was the high-performance Chevy dealers for the 60s for muscle cars, for all the Camaros and Chevelles and Novas and even Corvair that Yanko did. But these dealerships produced supercars. They'd bring them in, the factory cars. They'd transplant their own motors in them. Don Yanko had a deal set up with the factory, put the 427 motor in them from the factory. That's the Copo cars and the Yanko cars that we know today. But they made quite a few of those in 1969, for example. Now, with all of the performance that was going on in the 60s and all of the hype about muscle cars, there was these dealerships, and I want to mention Grand Spalding Dodge, too, in Chicago. That's another one, Jeremy, our good buddy, Mr. Norm. But all of this was going on in the 60s and the early 70s and creating all this excitement with the performance era of muscle cars. And then all of a sudden we had a thing called the embargo, oil embargo in the early 70s, 73, I believe, Jeremy?
That's exactly right.
Right after that, guess what happened? Muscle cars down the drain. History. Because everybody was thinking about, you know what, I've got to pay 50 cents. Now get this, 50 cents a gallon, maybe 52 cents, but I gotta sit in a line to get gas.
54.9 for Sunoco 260.
Yeah, can you believe that? God almighty, what we'd give for that today, right? 30-some years later, right? Now, what I'm talking about here is the demise in the dark days of muscle cars during the 70s. because after 71, 72, when things started to slow down because of insurance purposes, they were deregulating a lot of issues with these cars. They were detuning them. There was EPA was getting involved. There was a lot of issues going on. The federal government was getting involved. Pretty much the muscle cars started going down on the downswing. Now, when we hit that oil embargo, that was it. It was over, folks. I still remember today, in 1976, I had a detail shop, and I had bought and sold a few cars back then, and I went to a dealership in 1976, and it was up here in Glenview, not too far away from where we're at, and I don't believe they're in business today, but anyway, it was an old established dealership. And I went in the back and I bought wholesale a 1969 428 Super Cobra Jet Shaker 4-speed car. The only issue with that car, folks, was it needed a valve job. It wasn't hard to do and it wasn't expensive. And the car was dead mint. It was dead mint. And you know what I paid for that car?
How much?
I paid $75 for it. That's no BS, okay? And you know how they got the car? And they were glad for me to give them the $75 to get rid of it. You know why? They couldn't do anything. They were thinking about crushing the car, and they couldn't get very much money for it because nobody wanted it, because nobody wanted to spend the money that it cost to put gas in that car. Okay? So there's what happened to your performance, folks. And to get back to that story about the Mach 1, the 428 Super Cobra Jet, okay? That car was traded in on a Maverick. A Maverick, okay, with a 6-cylinder, 3-speed on the column. True story. So here we are in the 70s, and we've had all this great stuff that happened in the 60s, and some of the greatest legends of racing came out of the 60s. Drag racing, everybody was having a ball in the streets, and you know, then all of a sudden, nothing from the factory. It was just down the drain, dead history. Now all of a sudden, this is the only car, folks, that kept that muscle car image going and kept it alive. In 1974, Pontiac came out with a Super Duty. You've probably heard of some of those cars. So there wasn't a whole lot of good things happening in the 70s for performance. But Pontiac tried to keep things alive, and they did do so with some of the Trans Ams that they built in the early 70s. And then all of a sudden it leveled off. The cars were cool-looking cars. They had a lot of options. They had T-tops, but they still missed the heart and soul of what the 60s was all about with the real muscle car era. Horsepower, melting tires like we did with this car in the beginning of the video. Performance, that's what the muscle car era was all about. So all of a sudden in the late 70s, a man named Dennis Meekum, who owned Meekum Pontiac in Glendale, Arizona, decided, since he was getting these cars, he wanted to pep them up, he wanted to prep them up, he wanted to pump them up, he wanted to get it back some of the performance of the 60s. Something that somebody could come into his dealership, put the key in it, and be able to light it up like we just did on this car out in the street. This is called a Macho TA. That's the name that they called it because, you know, that was the thing, the Macho image back then. But you know what? This car will hold up to being a Macho car because it'll blow the doors off of a lot of cars that were even built or even come close in the 70s. And it will do the same thing to a lot of the performance cars of the 60s. Because what they did, they not only made beautiful graphics and trim on these cars, but they did internal work to the motors. They got the performance, all they could out of them. Some of the cars, they even put turbochargers on them. They had a roll bar that came in the package with the DMK Macho TA, and they had a lot of other different things that they did with these cars. And through the years, they expanded on that. So every year was different. In 1978, which this car's in 1978, they produced 202 Macho TAs. They sold every single one of them. Now with this particular car, and this is very interesting, and Jeremy will take a little bit of time to go around on the inside so that you can see this real well, we have an actual photograph of this car on Meekum Pontiac's showroom floor. This is number 142. Now this is the only white Macho TA with black stripe and silver trim. It's the only one built in 1978 with that color combination. Now this car also was one of his favorites because he brought this car home to his wife. She liked it so much, he was going to keep it for her. He let her drive it around for a few days. She fell in love with it, but you know, all of us car dealers, we got to sell them if we got the chance, because that's what we do. And he sold his car. Years later, in an article which is in the documentation that he had, he was quoted as saying, "I wish he hadn't have sold the car." Well, here it is, folks. Here's an opportunity for you to buy a very rare car. It's a car that's equivalent to the cars that were produced by all the high-performance muscle car dealers in the USA in the 60s. This car did not perform like this when it got to the dealership lot, but after the dealership got done doing all their performance preparations to this car, that's why we could sit out there and do a burnout. We could absolutely melt the tires off the rim of this car if we wanted to. And Jeremy, we had, what do you say that truck was? 45, 50 feet long? We completely smoked that truck out. You could not see it at all. It was incredible. So these were not only good cars that you could cruise around in and have fun, but they were really, really strong performance cars. And the more performance you wanted, if you talked to them at DMK Performance in the dealership, you could have them pump these cars up a little bit more performance. Whatever the ticket, whatever it called for, whatever you wanted to do, if you talked to them, they would try to work with you to get the car to where it would perform the way you would be happy with it. And believe you me, a lot of the cars in the 70s, after we got past 72, 73, 74, they were just nothing. You get in those cars and you drive them and they're nothing cars. They didn't do anything. You couldn't even get them to squeak the tire. And you know what? You can't even brake torque some of those cars. They have no torque. They have no bottom ends in the motors. They were just run-around cars. A lot of the 70s stuff out of the mid-70s, they disintegrated with rust because of the way that they were built. So we don't have a lot of the cars out of the mid-70s left, not compared to what we do out of the 60s, and we definitely don't have a lot of these cars that are left. These are extremely rare cars. This, again, is number 142 out of 202 that were produced, and this car has the same background, the same rich muscle car heritage as Yanko cars, as Nicky cars, as Baldwin Motion cars, as Burger cars, as Grand Spalding Dodge cars. This is what we're talking about, as Royal Pontiac. This is the same type situation. This is what makes this car very unique, not only in the way that it looks, but because of the fact that there was still a man out there who cared and wanted performance and was tired of pollution motors and cars that couldn't get out of their own way and cars that couldn't even light up the tires in the back even if you put them in water and put hand cream all over the tires. True story. But this car is different. This is not your average TA, and it's never going to be your average TA because it is a Macho TA. It's a high-performance built 400 engine, and you know what? It's got a good set of gears in the back. Jeremy, you can easily roast the tires anytime you choose to. So I'm going to turn you over to Jeremy. He's going to go through this documentation. It's quite interesting. There's a lot of photographs of this particular car in there, and there's a lot of articles. We also have DMK production sheet. We have a lot of the original information here. We also have the original build sheet on this particular car showing from the factory when it was shipped to the Pontiac dealership, Mecum Pontiac in Glendale, Arizona. Give Ed a call, 847-526-5950. He can give you some more information about this car. He can take some photographs of the documentation that we have because this car has a whole binder full of it. It is a great, rare find. It is a car that is going to go up in value greatly in the years to come. You've got all of the cars, for example, Yankos. They're $250,000, $300,000 today. Okay? This is a car that has the same principle of Nicky Chevrolet, Yanko Chevrolet, Baldwin Motion, Royal Pontiac. the Royal Bobcats that they put out. This is the same principle. Now we're talking about a car that is a fraction, a small fraction of what those other cars cost today. This car is not going to stay down on ground level. This car is going to rise. This is a car to get into now. In 5 years from now, you know what? You're going to have a healthy IRA because you were smart enough to realize this is an extremely rare car. This is the top-notch car that you could buy out of the 70 era that still is a performance car. This is a car that has a lot of history behind it. There's a lot of articles that were written about all the Macho TAs built, and they continued to build these cars up until the 90s when they quit. Now, they didn't produce a lot of them. Most of their production was in the late 70s and early 80s. So now I'm going to give you to Jeremy. He's going to give you a go-around in this beautiful car. I want to tell you it's a 400 automatic air. The air blows cold. It's got 53,000 miles. There's no rust, no issues with the car. It's got beautiful, magnificent, new, silky smooth paint on it, T-tops, chrome roll bar that was put in this car originally, beautiful velour interior in the car. It's just a fine car throughout, and it's a fine performance car. So Jeremy, give him a spin in this car and let him see what late 70s real performance was from a Macho TA 1978 number 142.
Trans Am 142 DKM. You've seen the burnout? You've heard the story. Let's check out the car. Totally awesome, as my daughter would say. It's a beautiful day to be checking it out, too. This video is after the burnout, after it's been detailed. So we got all that stuff off of the fenders. As you can see, no burnout residue. Well, I think our first order of business is to check out underneath the hood. So without any further ado, I've already popped it. Let's take a look. Nice hefty shaker air cleaner there. I think we're going to have to move this car around so we get the sunlight under the hood. Stand by. Okay, while we're inside here, Macho TA, a limited series Grand Touring Trans Am, built for the enthusiast by DKM Incorporated, a design performance company. It's also got a Fosgate Punch sound system. We'll get into this a little bit later on, though. A little more light on the subject. Still pretty hard to see the headers because on the late 70s and beyond, there's a lot more plumbing on top of the car. Trust me, there's a nice set of hookers down there. Headers, that is. Power steering, power brakes, AC. Nicely detailed. And the shaker fits perfectly. Let's take a look on the inside. Check out this velour interior here. Beautiful and immaculate. The back seat, you can see the roll bar. Nicely, perfectly done. Beautiful. A couple of 6x9 speaker grills in the back deck. It's got the T-tops, functioning dome light. Let's take out the little paper thingies here. The carpet's immaculate. Getting back in, it's showing 53,983 on the odometer. Standard gauges. It's got the voltmeter. It's got the this version of the tick-tock tachometer with a clock next to it. Oil pressure, water temperature. Power windows, of course. It's extremely beautiful on the inside here. It's very clean. Remote mirror. Let's check out the trunk. You know, I just feel obligated. I'm going to have to put that burnout video back on again right at the end of all this too. Okay. And in the trunk, it's dark. Not a whole lot to see except for a rather hefty set of 6x9s up there. Looking quite good though. Let's take a look under this carpet here. That looks extremely nice. Very, very nice. And if I can get this put back properly, I'll be happy. That looks pretty good. Soft seal? Soft. Stickers. Looking nice. Macho TA. Number 142 from DKM. One heck of a car. It's the Macho TA. Number 142. From ClassicMuscleCars.com. Okay, what we're looking at now is the folder full of documentation. This first one here is of the car in the Mecum showroom. Oops. Here is the car with a Bad Company front plate. Miss North Shore Princess. See if I can read who that is. Gerald Bangs? Can't quite read that, but more photos. And here was the DKM sales literature 1979. What magazine was this from? Can't I even tell? Maybe on the next page, or High Performance Pontiac magazine. It's an article. This is more of an article on the car itself, on the Macho TA. Another one here. Mecum's Macho. High Performance Pontiac once again. Goes into a whole lot of detail as well. I have to actually sit down and read through this. Here's from Superstock. Yeah. DKM's Macho TA. Last big block. And here, Trans Am, the last executive hot rod from Superstock magazine. What's the date on this? Can't tell from this. Continued on page 46. July of 79. Good stuff. Pumping iron from July 78 Hot Rod magazine. Company called DKM dropped off a modified 78 Trans Am Firebird. It's always fun looking at magazines of the era. Yeah, TA in this one is number 20. Not our particular car, but it's a Mecum TA. Another one from June 1978. What magazine? I'm not sure yet. There's some interesting road test data. Still not sure what magazine this is out of. PF. I'm seeing those initials. That might be the person's initials. Cheerios for Breakfast, Daytona 500, June 1978. Not sure what magazine. But here's some of the good stuff. Yes, this is the build sheet. And down over here, Mecum Pontiac. This is the original one. You can see how it is separated here in the back. It's the real deal. And there's the DKM production sheet. And that's that. Delivery June 78. There you have it.